Welcome back to Beyond Binary, where we decode the data behind the decisions shaping our world. Today's question: India's economy is on a roll again, but can it keep up the pace? The International Monetary Fund, better known as the IMF, has just raised India's growth forecast to 6.6% for 2025, calling it one of the strongest performances among major global economies. It's an exciting headline, but beneath it lies a complex story of resilience, recovery, and the hidden risks that could change everything. To understand why this number matters, let's start with what a growth forecast actually means. The IMF's forecast represents how much a country's GDP, its total economic output, is expected to grow over a specific period. For India, a 6.6% growth rate isn't just impressive, it's powerful. It signals strong domestic demand, robust exports, and a thriving service sector, especially in IT, fintech, and digital manufacturing. But this growth number didn't appear out of thin air. It comes after years of disruption, adjustment, and quite recently, the shock of what economists call the shutdown. Now, let's rewind a little to the last nationwide shutdown. When we talk about a shutdown in economic terms, we're not referring to a regular lockdown due to a pandemic or health crisis, but a broader halt of economic activity triggered by fiscal or political gridlock. In simpler terms, a shutdown occurs when the government temporarily closes or restricts its functions due to a lack of funding approval or legislative consensus. While shutdowns are more common in countries like the US, India faced its own version of a partial shutdown in 2023-24, rooted in a mix of financial stress, supply chain slowdowns, and digital disruptions. During that period, several government projects were stalled, public sector employees faced delays in payments, and industrial production slowed sharply. The causes were layered: global inflation spikes, trade tensions, fluctuating energy prices, and domestic policy uncertainty. But perhaps the biggest contributor was the sudden strain on global supply chains after a wave of cyber disruptions hit Asian markets, including India's logistics and payment systems. For weeks, digital payment networks and manufacturing chains were forced into emergency downtime. This triggered what economists termed the silent shutdown, a modern version of an economic freeze caused not by human lockdowns, but by cyber and data paralysis. The impact was immediate. India's GDP growth dipped below 5%, exports stalled, and unemployment rose sharply in the informal sector. However, out of this slowdown came something unexpected: resilience. The crisis pushed India to accelerate its digital infrastructure reform, strengthen data security frameworks, and diversify its energy and tech supply chains. The government rolled out emergency AI-based systems to detect fraud, manage logistics, and predict economic stress zones before they spiral into larger disruptions. Fast forward to 2025, and that's where the current momentum comes in. The IMF's upgraded forecast from 6.3% to 6.6% reflects this structural rebound. But what's actually driving it? Let's unpack the key forces. First, domestic consumption. India's middle class has bounced back stronger than before. Retail sales, digital transactions, and e-commerce penetration are all at record highs. With over 1 billion active digital IDs and a unified payments interface linking everything from street vendors to global e-commerce platforms, India's consumer base has become not just large, but hyper-connected. Second, manufacturing and exports are seeing a quiet revolution. The production-linked incentive, PLI schemes, once criticized for bureaucratic delays, have finally begun paying off. Electronics, semiconductors, and renewable energy components are now among India's fastest-growing exports. Global firms shifting away from China, the so-called China Plus One strategy, have found India to be the most attractive long-term manufacturing destination. Third, the technology sector continues to be India's economic backbone. AI-driven analytics, fintech innovation, and a surge in data engineering roles have placed India at the center of the global digital transformation. Even rural India is now contributing through digital literacy programs, decentralized gig work, and agricultural AI systems that optimize irrigation, reduce waste, and predict crop cycles. But it's not all smooth sailing. The same IMF report also warns of potential risks: uneven job growth, persistent inflation in food and energy, and the growing pressure of public debt. In short, India's growth story is strong, but fragile. Sustaining 6.6% means walking a tightrope between innovation and inflation, between expansion and equity. The memory of the last shutdown still looms as a reminder of how quickly optimism can fade. A shutdown, whether caused by fiscal paralysis, political standoff, or digital disruption, can freeze public spending, stall infrastructure projects, and erode investor confidence in weeks. For a developing economy like India, where millions depend on daily income, even a brief halt can cause long-term damage. So, can India sustain this new wave of growth? The answer lies in three key factors: policy continuity, technological resilience, and social inclusion. Policy continuity means sticking to long-term economic reforms instead of frequent policy resets. India's macroeconomic stability is improving, fiscal deficits are narrowing, tax revenues are rising, and inflation is being tamed. But consistency is critical. Investors and industries thrive on predictability, not surprises. Technological resilience is the second pillar. India's digital ecosystem, UPI, Aadhaar, ONDC, DigiLocker, and BharatNet, has given it one of the world's most advanced public tech infrastructures. But with that comes cyber vulnerability. The next shutdown might not come from a virus or a government decision. It could come from a digital breach. Strengthening cybersecurity, data integrity, and AI governance will determine whether India's growth engine keeps running smoothly. And finally, social inclusion. Economic growth that isn't felt at the grassroots level is like a tree growing without roots. The challenge now is ensuring that growth reaches rural India, women entrepreneurs, and emerging youth sectors. That means more skilling programs, AI-driven education tools, and microcredit access to empower small businesses. Interestingly, the IMF also noted that India's rise is reshaping global power dynamics. By 2025, India is projected to contribute over 18% of total global GDP growth, outpacing not only developed economies, but even some East Asian peers. It's not just an emerging market anymore, it's an emerging powerhouse. Still, a 6.6% forecast is not a victory lap. It's a benchmark to defend. Global factors like US interest rate hikes, oil price volatility, and geopolitical tensions can easily tip the scales. But the difference between this cycle and the last few years is clear. India now has buffers, stronger reserves, deeper digital reach, and an economy that's increasingly diversified beyond services and IT. Think of it this way: India's economy in 2025 isn't a single engine pulling carriages, it's a network of engines. Tech, manufacturing, agriculture, services, all digitally connected, learning, adapting, and optimizing. So, when the IMF says 6.6%, it's not just a number, it's a signal. A reflection of resilience built through crisis, reform, and digital reinvention. The real question for Beyond Binary viewers isn't whether India can hit that target. It's whether India can build systems strong enough to keep it steady when the next global shock hits. In the age of artificial intelligence, data volatility, and shifting geopolitics, economic growth is no longer just about production or consumption, it's about adaptability. And in that race, India has something powerful on its side. A young, digital-first generation ready to code, build, and create its way out of every slowdown. So yes, the IMF's 6.6% projection feels optimistic, but perhaps this time, it's not wishful thinking. It's a glimpse of what happens when resilience meets reinvention. Thanks for watching. If you found this breakdown insightful, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and share it with someone who loves understanding the world through data and ideas. This is Beyond Binary, where we decode the patterns shaping tomorrow.